Hey Deep Chatters, I'm Leah Morris here with my co-host Jennifer Butler, and this is Deep Chats Podcast, where we have raw discussions about real life. Each week you can expect unfiltered, no BS conversations from the heart about topics that actually might matter to you. We're just a couple of relationship coaches who want to cut through the small talk and dive deeper. So thanks for joining us on this journey, and be sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode.
Alrighty. Hey, Deep Chatters. Welcome to this awesome episode. I'm so excited. We have our first guest here today, and I can't wait to introduce you to her. We are going to be talking about empowering women to embrace their sexuality, and we have Julieta Chiara here with us. Julieta is an experienced blogger. She specializes in female sexuality, sex toys, and kink. And she is committed to using her platform to show that there are endless ways to express your sexuality. Through the use of her personal experience and sharing honestly about intimacy, she's made insightful impact on her community by helping others explore who they are within a safe and positive environment. And I am so inspired by you, Julieta, and I will share that I've known you for a very long time, since you were very, very young. And so I am just so proud of the woman you've become and the impact you're having on women as a whole, and femininity and empowerment. And so thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's such a great honor to be here with you and Leah, and especially since there is a component that you have known me for a long time. You've had to have known me since I was probably 12 or 13 years old, if I'm correct, somewhere along those lines, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a long time.
How the tables have turned so quickly.
Exactly. Except somehow I keep getting older, so I don't know.
Well, we're all due for a group Botox session. We'll go together.
Exactly. So I guess just share a little bit about yourself. I know I gave kind of, the highlights, but just so that our community can get a feel for who you are and connect with you a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So like you said, my name is Julieta, and I told you earlier before the podcast, we shortened my last name because it is a complicated one. Chiaramonte is a lot to handle, but I am a 23-year-old sex blogger from Salt Lake City, Utah, and I started doing what I do because living in Salt Lake City, which is predominantly of the Mormon religion, I saw such a, not even a niche, but a lack in the community in regards to talking about sexuality, let alone female sexuality. And I, coming from a very open Argentine family, basically in my community became the sex educator. So from there, it just became my passion, and that's what I went to school for. I have a bachelor's in human sexuality, and I blog about this, and now I'm deeply enthralled into the adult toy business as well. So that's a little bit about me, but other than the professional side, I am a digital nomad. I travel almost full time, and I have a deep love for cats and techno music.
Yay!
Which always go together perfectly.
Yeah. So let's start just talking about the discomfort, right? That is so prevalent with women and sexuality.
It's so prevalent, and I think that's where my interest really sparked as a young person. It's because not only is it taboo, especially in the US, it's not so bad in South America where my family's from, but not only is it taboo in the US to be a sexual woman, but to be a sexual woman in Salt Lake City, Utah is almost illegal from what it seems. And it really started with my own self-discovery, and I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you. I didn't have the parents that shamed sexuality. I knew what sex was by the time I was 5. We still all walk around each other naked. It's the most open structure ever. What really got to me and where my shame came in is when I started associating with my social circles and seeing the way people treated themselves and their views on their bodies, and then their relationships with others, which ended up being physical, right? From there, it became so apparent that women, out of everybody, are taught to be afraid of their bodies, afraid of their functions, if they even know they have any, which in Utah, it's hard to believe, but there are women who have no idea what is going on underneath the belly button, let alone that there's any sort of power there other than making children. And from there, it's always been used as a power and scare tactic. A sexual woman is a scary woman. So the less sexual you are, the less orgasmic you are, the less interested in your own body you are, then you're in society an ideal woman,
right?
A respectable woman. I hate that term, the respectable woman.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've all kind of dealt with that, no matter what phase of life we've been through. So you met me when I was 12 or 13 years old, and I started dealing with this in my social circles, and I'm sure that you both have similar stories as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little older than you, and I know that for me, I grew up being taught that, you know, men, that was just men. Men can have sex, right? Men, you know, feel sexual, and that's okay. And it's a woman's job to stay covered and make sure she doesn't like turn the man on and like encourage anything that wouldn't be respectable, right? And then as you do turn into a woman, well, women have to be in love, like sex and love or sex and feelings have to go together. And that's, I mean, I bought into that, you know, that's just shame all over the place. And I don't know if it was the same for you, Leah, but that's kind of the mentality that I was brought up with.
I mean, I was raised in a very religious household. Went to a private Christian school. I couldn't even listen to like the radio typically unless it was like oldies, like 50s music, or like Christian music. And so I was very, very sheltered as far as sex goes. And I first actually learned about sex when I was in junior high, and my parents handed me a book that said, "Where did I come from?" And the characters in the book were cartoon characters. They were extremely unattractive. Like I was not meant to be excited or aroused by this book at all. It was meant to probably like turn me off even more. And very minimal. It was just like the penis goes in the vagina and then they fall in love, and then a baby happens when the sperm meets the egg. It was like, there was no actual like sexual interaction conversation. It was like, this is how babies are born. That was the extent to it. And so yeah, I mean, I think I grew up with like a deep, deep fear of mentioning sex, hearing about sex. Pornography was like sinful.
Mm-hmm.
Even like talking about condoms and like practicing safe sex was something that would make me sweat. Like I was just so afraid that something bad was gonna happen to me. So that was the extent of my sexual experience until I got into college. Really.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of us, you know, our generation that are starting from that point, like having all of this sort of shame about sex. So where do women begin? Like, where do women begin to sort of try to break away from the shame and the false teachings that we've all endured?
It's crazy to hear both your stories, because I feel like in between the three of us, we have three very different experiences. You have me, like I was completely open. I hope to invite you to dinner with my mom and my sister sometime, because our dinner table talk consists of blowjobs. And it might be even too open in someone's eyes. And then you, like, I feel like Jen had a pretty typical experience, and then Leah had what I would consider the Utah experience. You had the Utah experience. Oh, yeah. And it's a horrible stereotype, but it just lives up to its name just so well.
Yeah.
And the problem is, it doesn't matter what age, what time, and what place, there always seems to be, in some way, shape, or form, some sort of sexual shame. And I don't think you can have the teachings, but the thing is, no one ever taught you about your body. No one ever taught you that you're supposed to have pleasure, and you learn the bare minimum. You learn that a penis goes into the vagina and a baby is made, but you learn really nothing at 90% of what actually takes for a penis to meet vagina and successfully make something happen. So they made it sound like a puzzle piece, and it's not. It's much more complex than that. And that's scary for women, and I'm sure men to an extent too, because the problem is, you get taught these things, and when you're at these ages and you start having urges and feelings and sexual attraction, and maybe you're masturbating, but you don't know you are because you were never taught what masturbation is. This is a really scary experience that's all localized inside of you, and you have no one to talk to about it. And I mean, even myself, I have the most open family. And when I realized that like 13 or 14, I'm like, oh my God, I've been masturbating for years. I don't know how to approach this, because you're not supposed to touch yourself, apparently.
Right.
And that freaks you out. But then that travels along your entire lifetime. I'm still helping women in their 50s and 60s because they've never had an orgasm. So
Wow.
it's some crazy shit. And so how do we undo that? And I think the first step, and I think this goes with any issue in life, is recognizing it. I think it's recognizing that even though I've been conditioned this way, and that even though I know it's wrong, it's still, I don't know if trauma maybe is a little bit too intense of a word, but it is a little traumatic. If you've been conditioned your whole life to think sex is horrible, and that you're bad if you want it, and that your sexuality is horrible, even if you acknowledge it and want to dip into it, it's still going to feel wrong to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step is recognizing it. And then the second step is, in my opinion, is reformulating the circle around you and the education you're getting, which I think the second step is the hardest, because if you've already been shamed your whole life for sexuality, it's going to be extremely hard for you to get out of your bubble and learn anything about that sexuality too.
Right. So like being willing to access people like you, or maybe inquiring about different options for toys and self-pleasure. And well, as I say that though, I wonder, is there a way to separate out like learning how to learning how to find pleasure first before you even associate it with sex, right? Because isn't it really like, I don't know, sometimes I'll be outside and the wind will blow, and like I'll look up at the sky and I'll smell the flowers and I will feel so much pleasure. And I'm not sure that that's very off from the pleasure that I feel when I'm close to orgasm. You know, it's like,
absolutely not. I think what would be a better term is the art of receiving.
yeah.
I feel like we've been conditioned as women, we have to always be giving, and we're not allowed to take or receive. And we'll get to this later, but I think that's what makes it hard. Even as a sexually experienced woman, it can be hard to receive and enjoy pleasure. But it is about finding pleasure in, first of all, life, and then in yourself. I don't know if this happened to you too, and this is a question I have for you, but in your pleasure journey and exploring your sexuality, what part did masturbation play in that? Because I think before exploring your sexuality with anybody else, the strongest sexual relationship you need to have is with yourself.
Absolutely. Do you want to go first, Leah, or you want me to take that one? I'll take it. So I think I didn't even learn to masturbate till I was like 14. And I think it like accidentally happened. I think I like was going to sleep and my hand kind of brushed across and I was like, whoa, like, what's that? That felt really good. Maybe I should like stay there and see what happens. And I didn't know what I did. Like, I didn't know if it was normal, if it wasn't. Would it always feel that way? Like, was there something special? Like, I had no idea. And like you said, like I had nobody to talk to about it. And I think I would do it like once in a blue moon because I felt so confused. And then so I got married in my early 20s. And fortunately, I did marry a man that was, sexually open and exploratory. And so I did have that gift of, I think, learning about my own body and learning to masturbate and really learning to take pleasure in myself. But it was still through him. I felt like somehow I was being given permission to do it from a man.
Mm-hmm.
So
it wasn't your own journey.
Yeah.
And you'll see that, and I'm sure people will agree after this podcast that especially when it comes to masturbation, a lot of people don't explore masturbation until after they've already been in sexual relationships, because there's still an element of pleasuring and being, I guess, seductive and selfish in yourself. Being selfish, there's still a negative connotation with that, especially in the sexual realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my story, honestly, was you guys are gonna laugh. I love this conversation, by the way. I was married, and I lost my virginity, I think, when I was almost 18. And which I think was pretty late for a lot of my peers. But I always equivalated like pleasure to somebody like giving it to me, not me giving it to me. And so I, dated, had a few partners, got married, got divorced. And I remember getting divorced and driving down the road with my friend and being like, now that I like sex, does this mean that I'm gonna like have to be like, I'm just gonna like be so horny all the time? And she was like, well, why don't you masturbate more? And I was like, I don't masturbate at all. And she was like, what? She's like, we're making a U-turn right then and there. We go to the sex store, or the sex toy shop, and I get my first vibrator, and it felt like, so that was the first time I masturbated, and it felt like, oh my God, I felt so powerful in like, I can give this to me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to wait. I don't need to get permission. I don't need to, like, when I need something, I can give myself what I need. It's like being thirsty or being hungry. Like, I can feed myself. I can drink, water myself. I can give myself an orgasm. Like, it was life-changing, to be honest. It really was. And I was 30 years old, so.
Wow.
It's completely life-changing. And when you, and it's funny because a lot of people you'll have your first masturbation experience, which I call it the one where you recognize you are actively masturbating. Because when we are young, we don't realize that from inside of the womb to early adulthood, we are masturbating in very strange ways that we will not know. So if you look back, you might see patterns of maybe you were little, or maybe your parents will tell you used to like hump things. It's super normal, but it's about that first intentional masturbation experience. It blows your mind. It's like what's that show? Like the Neil deGrasse Cosmos. It just fucking goes off. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it feels like. And I always joke and tell people about eye crossing orgasms. And I'm pretty sure the first time you intentionally masturbate, that's it. That is the one.
Yeah. I would agree. Even at 14, I mean, I remember that one.
It's just as important as like losing your virginity to somebody. Like you remember that like in detail, and just like how, and honestly, I think for me it felt more beautiful and meaningful than when I actually lost my virginity. Like,
yeah,
it was like a very sobering, clear experience.
Yeah.
I think the sobering aspect of it is that when you finally masturbate and realize you have this power, you realize that no one's going to be able to give it better to you than you. You're like, oh, wow, that was fast and effective, and it was pleasurable the whole way, and there was no miscommunications, there was no nervousness, it was just me, and more of me.
Yeah.
And that makes the experience full circle. It's very wholesome. And then hopefully when I tell women and they start to explore their masturbation, when they nail down masturbation, that's when they also nail down communicating what they want and what they need to their partners. They come back to me and they say, I've been married for 15 years and I've never once told my husband what I actually like because I had no idea what I liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have I've thought about this a bit too, and I feel like what you're saying is where my brain went with this too, is I had been waiting my whole life to get permission in so many different ways from the world around me. And when masturbation finally came into play, that was just another way that I had been waiting for permission. And suddenly the question became what do I want? And how can I give it to myself? And it changed so much, just that simple act. And I never would have thought that. Thank God for my friend who was like, girl, we need to get you a dildo.
She just swings it around. Yeah. And it's funny my two best guy friends that are outside this room, it's funny as well because in our friend group that has many women, as I said, I work a lot with toy brands and I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of toys. And there's no way I can take them all with me. So what do? I'm just that friend that gives away a ton of sex toys. And not even the other night, they said, Julie, you might not realize it, but you've given everybody their first sex toy. And these women are starting to slowly bloom out of their personalities. And it's not that anything was wrong with them, but there's been a distinct correlation in the fact that you gave them a sex toy, they're exploring their sexuality, and all of a sudden, they're a lot more confident, they're a lot more energetic, they're a lot more powerful and intentional with the things that they are doing. Like these women suddenly seem like they have a newfound passion that they didn't have before. And it's all from something it's all from a freaking silicone toy. And it's not to say that the toy is the powerful thing. The powerful thing is that they found themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking before, is just how much we suppress our own power by denying ourselves orgasm, which, I think so much of our feminine power is our sexuality. And we cut ourselves off from it. Like, no wonder why we feel so just kind of suppressed. It's like, I'm a big person and in the work that I do is always like, okay, how am I creating my life? How am I the source of my experience, right? And even in that, how am I the source of feeling like I have no voice, feeling like I have no power, feeling like I'm suppressed or just kind of really withheld, right? And it's okay, I'm cutting myself off from myself.
Absolutely. And if you think back to it, this makes zero sense because when it's someone who identifies as a male, it's the complete opposite. They find their sexuality and they're the best thing that's ever fucking existed. They get to, if they have multiple partners, they're fucking amazing. If they have a healthy sex life, they're on this golden, they're the ones that if they don't have a healthy active sexuality, they are looked down on or frowned upon or there's something wrong with them. But as long as we female identifying people stay like little innate submissive objects, then all of a sudden we're glorious. But if we find the same powers as men, there's something wrong with that. And that is because your sexuality is in a way your power.
Yeah.
It is your power. You wouldn't be here without sexuality. You need food, you need water, you need sex. That is it.
Yeah, I love that. I actually have that written down here. I wanted to talk about how sex is a part of well-being. It is a part of well-being.
You would die without sex. You would die. The human population would die. Is that not to say that there's variances in sexuality? Of course. We have our friends that are asexual or people that just don't have that much interest in sex, but even within those spectrums, there's still an aspect of sexuality, attraction, and connection. Right. Which not all connections have to be deep. Not all sexual interactions have to be this, like you mentioned, like you have to fall in love and then everything comes together and you just pop a baby out and it's going to be great. It doesn't have to be that way. but it is part of your well-being, and people don't see that it's scientifically proven that sex boosts your immune system. It helps you sleep. It keeps your hormones in check. And I like talking to both of you about this, but I feel like if you don't use your sexuality, it's like you have this like pent up, stuck energy in your body. This is an energy that you were born and programmed with. And if you're not using it, I feel like there's an energetic chakra style imbalance in the body. And I don't know if you've noticed that, maybe around like your time of month, or if you haven't had sex in a while, or if you haven't masturbated.
I can vouch for that. I can vouch for that. I have been single for a long time, and I've gone through many different phases of singledom or singlehood or whatever that word is. And I went through a phase where I was like, I'm not dating, I'm not having sex, I am not anything for multiple years. And I can tell, yeah. And I felt so like disconnected from myself. Really just, I get the image of just feeling like tight in a ball. Like I just felt so disconnected from source, so disconnected from myself. And it was like I was martyring myself through deprivation. It's like starvation, right? It's like sexual starvation. But I was so, because I wanted to talk about this too. And the reason that I went through those couple years was because of this idea that for women, there has to be feelings attached, right? Like I know there's like some science around like when semen enters the vagina, there, then there's like all the oxytocin that gets released and forms attachment. Fine. I think for a long time, I was taught attachment and love are the same. And so for women, I bought into, well, women can't just have sex the way men do, right? Without getting attached and having their heart broken. And oh my God, how crazy is that?
And that always freaks me out because I'm like, girl, the sex is good. There's no problem with wanting it again.
Right.
If that's the attachment, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Well, I think a lot of times attachment gets confused with love, right?
Absolutely.
It's not the same thing.
And I think all of us can vouch. It's like, you don't have to love someone to have some ecstatic sex.
But I'm not sure that, I think a lot of women don't believe that. They really believe that sex and feelings go together for women. There's like a biological component to that.
And that's the other thing, Leah, Jen, I tell this to people all the time because people get confused with my views as well. They're like, oh, well, you're very open, polyamorous, whatever. That doesn't mean that there's not something special about having connection with someone you're having sex with. It's just saying that it's not so black and white. It's not saying that you either float in the white or you float in the black. It's not saying you either don't have sex at all or you do have sex with only one person that you really care about. You're allowed to have amazing sexual connected relationships, and you are also allowed to have one that may not be connotated with this weird, intense love. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself if every time you want to have sex, you need to find this insane connection.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think like that's something that not a lot of my friends, but a few of my friends talk to me about, like not ever really feeling like they have like amazing sex with the people that they're in love with. And then I have friends who are like, if I'm not having an amazing sex, then I need to not be with that person. That must mean something more. And there's just like a whole spectrum of different ways that I find my friends and even my guy friends too understand sex differently and put different meanings behind things. And at the end of the day, I tend to now, I've come a long way since my first dildo, but I tend to believe now that we all, I know my mom's going to listen to this, and so this is why I'm a little bit nervous, but I think sex is sex. I think that, it's never, for me, there's just never, you can't count on it being a certain way every single time, even with the same partner. And, you know, especially with the same partner, I think like we all have moods. Well, our hormones are shifting within the month. We have different emotional things going on. The setting's different, the context, like just so much goes on. And I think to have a certain expectation, that's what really like begins, like what you said, Jen, to sort of like stifle us from being able to say like, I'm gonna do what I feel. I'm gonna do what I feel I need right now. Having all those like rigid expectations of like, there needs to be feelings attached. It needs to be from a man and blah, 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 blah. Suddenly like we're only having sex on like Mondays at 10 a.m. once a month, you know?
Right.
So
and that's not
anyway.
good for it's not good for your well-being to not be intuitive and to not go with your gut on certain things. And I think we can get back to this, but there's an amazing book called Mating in Captivity. And it kind of goes back to what you said about couples that maybe aren't having sex and stuff. There's a huge difference between love and eroticism. You can love someone a lot, and you can actually have a deteriorated sex drive towards them. I think that'd be an interesting book for both of you to read, especially when it comes to coaching and relationships, because that's actually a huge thing, is in the well-being of a couple, you find that sometimes love evolves, and love doesn't always mean sex. So that's a really good topic to cover. And in terms of this well-being, if we're not catering to our sexuality, we do go kind of crazy. And I don't know if, and like you said, Jen, you felt like you're just stuck inside of yourself.
Yeah.
And this is actually why believe it or not, this lack of well-being in women is why the first vibrator was born. And this was way back when obviously women were nothing but baby-making machines. This was deemed as hysteria. Women would go to the doctor, they'd be like, my wife is fucking crazy, she's not happy, she's depressed, like she's all over the place. Hysteria is not a thing. What hysteria is a sexually frustrated woman who's trying to claw her way out. And so what happened is these women would go to the doctor for hysteria, and what they would actually be going to the doctor for is to get manually relieved. And that manual relieving hurt doctors' hands, which is what led to the invention of the vibrator.
I just learned about this like 2 days ago. This is the second time I'm hearing this. It's insane.
They believe, they're like you just have, the doctor has to do this technique on the vulva, and they didn't even know the entire clitoris was discovered in 2005. So let's get something straight. But yeah, they would go to the doctor, and they'd basically get manually fingered, and then doctors figured out, they're like, oh, this sucks, like my fucking wrist hurts, so I'm doing this all day. Women are going fucking crazy. And that's how the first vibrator was born.
Wow, that's insane. Wow.
If that's not the only point you need to see that sex is for your well-being as a woman, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
I don't know what is.
Yeah. Wow. I was listening to someone talk the other day about how they, in their research, learned that women would stand in front of the refrigerator, let's say, and be like, oh, I'm hungry. I don't know what I want. I feel like I want something, but I don't know what. And they wanted to have an orgasm. They wanted sex. And when they started having orgasms and sex, that behavior stopped. There was no like standing in these random places in front of your fridge, like, oh, I know I want something, but I don't know what. You want to have an orgasm.
Like, you want to have an orgasm, you want it now, and you want it preferably before you accidentally assault someone because you're that frustrated.
Right. Exactly. I love that.
It's a movie, and I'm sure you can look it up, but it explains that portion of the vibrator. And I mean, there's a whole slew of things that people were inventing, these sexual health products, but they weren't connotating that sexual needs equal well-being. I mean, there's there's a whole other slew of things, like wise men used to wear butt plugs because it apparently made you more intelligent. There's a whole other ball game that we don't know about, but at the end of the day, it's your sexuality equals you being a normal, healthy, happy person in your waking life. When we suppress our sexuality, that's when we see that there's a lot of discrepancies, and people don't like to talk about that. You see social disorders, you see really bad communication skills, people with extreme nervousness. That's another one.
Yeah.
Now that I'm here in Europe, I've been super interested in learning a lot about in Amsterdam or these Nordic countries, how they have sexual surrogates, which are trained professionals that have to teach people intimacy, because
wow.
Yeah, and so they're trained professionals that do have sexual interactions with their clients, but these are people who don't know how to be touched, don't know how to touch, don't know how to approach. And that might sound a little odd for us, because this is a very human thing. I feel like even if we had a suppressed childhood, you know, in the end, we all came out pretty okay, right?
Yeah.
We came out pretty okay, but that affects people so deeply that they need someone to help them learn in later life how to do the most basic of human interaction, which may be holding someone's hand, touching them, and then, yes, all the way to how to have sexual interaction.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
I
have
is.
a question.
Uh-huh.
Like, so I know a lot of this is like cultural too. A lot of the ways that we understand sex, and I don't know why this just popped in my head. Like, is there like a more sexually evolved culture in your opinion in the world? Like,
I would say yes. There definitely are. I mean, I think Europe is a big one. It's a half and half. Mind you, everything always has its limitations. Everything always has its ups and downs. Talking about sexuality here in Spain, it's nothing to be ashamed of at all. And then you learn about different cultures around the world where sex is encouraged by the time you're like 13 or 14, or you learn about these Southeast Asian colonies where the woman is the one that has multiple husbands. There's so many different cultures around the world where it actually enforces sexuality, and a lot of cultures that actually encourage female sexuality, which happy about that. But as a whole, I think every single culture does have its own stigma, its own limitations. And I mean, I feel like I was kind of in the epicenter of that, honestly.
Yeah.
I mentioned living in Utah, and people automatically, that's the first thing they say, like, Mormon, are you Mormon? And they ask me if I'm Mormon because they meet me and they're like, I don't think you fit that stereotype, which it's absolutely correct. So it's my life mission to teach people about their orgasms and vaginas, because no one around me knew what those were.
Yeah.
wow.
So I want to, and somebody actually wrote me about this and asked if I could ask this question, but really going into the fluidity of sexuality and allowing yourself to explore if you're a woman, other women, and seeing where you're, I guess, being more flexible in your boundaries around that. So somebody had written in and asked for advice for a woman who is going to be with a woman for the first time. And I think that's such a beautiful question, because first of all, bravo to you for being however old you are, you know, and being willing to explore something new.
Oh, absolutely. I get this question a lot, and I feel like that could be a whole other podcast talking about shame around your sexual orientation. Well, plot twist, and I think your listener will be happy to hear this, but there are multiple studies to show that we are all a little gay.
Yeah.
So exactly. There are no worries, and sexual fluidity is much more common in female identifying. So it's completely normal. We are the #1 viewers of lesbian porn. And it's actually, statistically speaking, straight women are the #1 consumers of lesbian porn, because it is usually much more gentler. It's not as abrasive. It's female focused. And having the urge to be with a woman, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's just an innate curiosity that we've all had at some point. Yeah. Now, I can understand your listeners, probably her nerves. She's like, oh God, like, what do I do? How do I approach this? And I can attest to that. my first time with a woman, I was probably more terrified than losing my virginity with a man. 100%. 100%. And I found it to be a beautiful experience because I suggest this to your listener, it's to be honest, be vulnerable, and communicate. This is a whole new experience for you, and there's nothing wrong with going into it slowly, asking questions, asking about boundaries, asking how to explore someone else's body. And that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
I got into a situation where I'm with a woman for the first time. I didn't even know where to begin. My naive self, I remember the first question I asked her, I was like, where should I start kissing you? Or what can I do? Or what feels good for you? And that's really what led the way. And I found that in my first experience with a woman, it was much more passionate and much more fulfilling. And I felt that there was a deep understanding. I don't want to say a sisterhood because maybe that's not the right word, but we both have the same bodies. We both kind of have a general knowledge of what our needs are. So it felt like a much more connected experience.
I love that. And what I'm hearing is, and I imagine is there is almost like an ease in the communication piece.
Absolutely. And that's where I felt, like I said, it's scary to be vulnerable. It's scary to be the one to say, like, I want to ask you questions. I want to know what you want. It's hard to ask for what we want. And it's also hard to ask for feedback. I think in sex, it's terrifying to ask, what can I do better? Or what can I do for you? But in this sense, it was comforting knowing that perhaps as women, we have had some of the same experiences or the same needs, and we could satisfy those for each other because, I mean, we're both women.
Yeah.
We both have the same bodies. We're both in a situation. We're both kind of terrified. I'm like, well, we have each other. So
yeah.
Let's do this together, shall we?
That's beautiful. I love that. That's awesome.
Have you explored with women as well?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What'd you say?
Have you explored with women as well?
I have throughout my many years on this earth. And yeah, it's a very different experience, and it's very there's a gentleness and a tenderness and I know what you mean. Sisterhood's not the right word, but it's
like an alliance.
It's something. It's like it's almost like, you know how powerful a room is that's filled with women. And you feel it. The energy is potent when women come together with a common intention or a common goal or a common consciousness. It's almost like somehow the energy automatically unites and aligns, and it's like you could move mountains together as women. And I think that component comes alive or happens in sexual experiences, I think, with women as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never done girl on girl or anything like that, but I do. I mean, what you said was like the straight women are number one consumer in lesbian porn. Like, that's definitely up my alley. That's something that it's always been that case. Always for the past 4 years. Like, it's not been that long since I've been consuming porn, but I think it's interesting because like I said, like, there's so much like shame around sex to begin with for me, that the conversation around this is like next level shame. And and like the even talking about thinking about it is something that I've just begun doing, and so I'm a little stunted in that. Not stunted because I feel like we're all just on like different sexual journeys here, but that definitely is my truth, and something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong journey, and I think where people, and this is for men as well, is we do get stunted. Sometimes we self-sabotage ourselves by thinking that sexually we need to be somewhere or we need to be doing a certain thing. And it's not that way at all. We all have our own journeys, and it doesn't matter how fast or how slow you're going. As long as it's satisfying and true to you and it feels right, that's really all that matters.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Word.
Yeah. I love that.
I'm so happy that your listeners have submitted these questions. This is lovely.
Yeah. Well, sex is a hot topic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually had one question asked by a couple different listeners of mine. It was, what do you wish you would have known? And maybe we can all answer this, but what do you know now that you wish you would have known when you were a child, when you were younger? Like,
I think, and it's funny because, like I said, super open family. I think when I would have started having sex, because I was quite young when I started having sex, I wish I would have known the importance of my pleasure and that I deserve to have it too. I think I went years having sex with boyfriends where I never once had an orgasm. Like, I could always masturbate and do it, but I think it's important. I wish I would have known how pertinent it would be to have my own pleasure and how powerful that is to bring to the table.
Yeah, mine's similar, I think. I wish I would have known how sacred that part of me is. Like we have our own pleasure system. Like, it's ours. Like, I don't know, I guess as a child, I just wish I would have known that it was okay to make myself feel good, and that it wasn't a sin. It was the direct opposite. Like, if you believe in God, well, then God gave you like your own ability to feel good, to release hormones, to relax yourself, like so many things. And I just think it's empowering to know that throughout your life, that you have that capability and that power.
Absolutely.
I think for me, I wish I totally hear both of what you're saying and like the power and the sacredness of it. But I wish for me it was more normalized. I wish for me it was like, this is human. This actually isn't that special. This is like a very natural, innate function that we all have, that we all are going to use at some point or another. And this is a bullet list of things that entails. Like I remember learning about, in health class, like learning about nutrition and like, these are the things your body needs and like the normal vitamins and minerals. Like, I kind of wish I have like a bit of like a pragmatic brain and I like things to make sense. I wish it had been approached from that angle of like, this makes sense. Here's your bullet list. Like, totally just rip the Band-Aid off and say like, this is totally normal. Let's talk about it. Like, I wish that would have been my messaging as a child, rather than it being so like hush hush, magical, dark world of sex. But now after understanding that bullet point list, now I'm on this understanding of it being powerful and it being something that, like, especially as a woman, we hold that power. And it feels really good to sort of use that in a healthy way too, whether we're in relationships or single. It's kind of cool to be able to feel that within me and say like, I have this like beautiful sexual power and all my friends do. And it's just like, I don't know, it's really awesome feeling.
It's something that you've created. And that's kind of what I talked to you about earlier about orgasmic meditation or orgasmic intention. The thing is, this is one of the few things that you can do where you can fully create something. And creating an orgasm or creating pleasure within yourself is something that only you can do for yourself. You can have partners that do it, but it's fucking powerful to know I do this for myself. I can make this for myself. I create this pleasure inside of me. And if I can create that pleasure inside of me, I can create fucking anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
So what is it you were talking about just now? Orgasmic meditation or manifestation? What did you say?
Yeah, orgasmic meditation, and then it leads into orgasmic manifestation as well. I think that I have, like, they say meditating that you have to calm the monkey brain, whatever. I'm sorry, I can't normally meditate. The only time I calm the monkey brain is when I'm masturbating. That is when everything zones out and I am zoned in. And I noticed that in this process of learning how to calm my brain and wanting to manifest, in order to manifest, I had to get clear in my intentions. And the only time I could get mentally clear in my intentions was when I was masturbating. So I connected the dots. I'm like, oh shit. I was like, okay, so masturbation, manifestation, meditation, and they all go into a weird circle altogether. And with that being said, I was like, okay, if I can create this amazing feeling inside of me, what if I created that feeling with the intention of accomplishing things in all parts of my life?
Wow.
And that's how I started manifesting with my sexuality. And you can believe manifestation or not. I'm a woo-woo person. I masturbate with a freaking rose quartz dildo. I am not ashamed to say it. I'm as woo-woo as a fucking gets. But there is power, even if you're not woo-woo, if you can set an intention and flow through with it and acknowledge how powerful you are, I think that starts to change things in your life.
Well, is it Mama Gina, right? Have you read, I'm sure you've read her stuff.
Yeah.
She talks about how, like, a woman's intuition is in her vagina. Like, it is all about her sexuality and connection to her body and her pleasure. That is what lights up our intuition and makes us such powerful manifestors and so intuitively attuned.
Wow.
And in her book, that you're talking about, the book Pussy, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I remember, and I read this just like 6 months ago, and it was like, before making any decision, have you asked your pussy about it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that is a great idea. He will tell you.
I was like, I've been sitting here, I've been manifesting stuff with my pussy, but then on my day-to-day, have I been asking her how she feels about it?
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So awesome. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. I love it.
She rules everything.
Let her rule.
I love this. I've got to give this a shot. I've honestly never heard of this before, but it makes sense. It really does make sense. And they say too, like, that's where we create.
You go first.
Okay. That's where, like, our power of creativity and inspiration and all that, like, I mean, if you read any, like you said, whether you're woo-woo, whether even if you look at, like, I don't know, indigenous cultures, and there's a lot of text and a lot of history and a lot of belief around that being, like, this center of whatever you want to call it, whether it's manifestation, creation, birthing, like, inspiration, like, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
An easy way for your listeners to do this if they want to, and I think this is maybe a step that you can do. I recommend, if you're comfortable with masturbation, and this may seem a little weird because people think, oh, well, if you masturbate, it's because you have to be sexually turned on. Let's get one thing straight. I got to say, I think the most powerful orgasms I've had from masturbation have been masturbating to my own success. There is no other way that they have been any more powerful. So if you envision something you really want, or envision a future that you want, or something that you want to happen in your life, and you bring that into your masturbation practice, you would probably be surprised at how fast that happens for you.
Wow.
I am so going to be trying this tonight.
Oh, yeah.
This is awesome.
I never even thought of that. I was like, oh, yes.
It's very strange at first.
Because you listen to, like, Law of Attraction, and the most important component is the feelings, right? It's like, think it, believe it, but you have to feel it. You have to find a way to the better feeling. What better way to find a way to the better feeling than masturbating?
Wow.
I'm
Yes.
so going to try that tonight. That is awesome.
And if you have, and that's the thing, and that's the other oxymoron. If you have people telling you that sex is the most powerful thing on earth and it's the most connected thing on earth, and there's nothing better than having connected, amazing sex, and it brews the most powerful love possible, why the fuck are you not doing that with yourself?
Yeah.
It's like, why are you not, there's all this power that you have with your sexuality, and apparently it's only valid if it's with someone else. I'm like, no, the only someone else is me and my manifestations and my sexuality, and I'm pairing them together to make something much more intense. And I have a feeling, I can have that with someone, but I mean, I'm enjoying the things I have manifested off of simply masturbating about it.
Yeah. No, I love that you said that. If it's so powerful and so connective, why are we not doing that for ourselves? Like first and foremost with ourselves.
It doesn't have to be with anybody. And obviously, like we said back in our conversations, you can have amazing, connected, wonderful, deep, soulful sex with someone else, with a partner, multiple partners. But why is that so foreign if you do it with yourself? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Wow. I know, Julieta, you've blown my mind in so many ways. Like, I've been like, I don't know if you've seen me over here. I'm like feverishly taking notes. I wanted to ask you, is there any like parting words of wisdom that you like just really feel called to share with our listeners?
I have one that comes to mind, and I'll elaborate just a little bit on it. This is a quote that someone told me, especially when I started exploring my entrepreneurship in terms of my sexuality, and as a woman in business and a woman in sexuality. And this person told me, it's either a fuck yes or a fuck no. And what that means to me is, when it comes to your sexuality or anything in your life, don't dabble in the middle. It either feels good and you pursue it, and if it doesn't feel good at the slightest or you're questionable, you drop it. Do only what is good and meant for you.
I love that. Yeah.
Yes,
So that's seriously the only thing that comes to mind. I think about that every single day, and I don't know if that's a Regina thing where it's like my pussy's telling me it's either a fuck yes or a fuck no, but there's no time on this earth for the in-between.
Yeah.
I think those are awesome words of parting wisdom.
Yeah, I do too. And it really forces you to look at like, where am I feeling pulled to? Like, I actually use that same phrase in a different way. Like, it's either a full body yes or it's just no.
Yeah.
And meaning like, it needs to feel like all of me is being called to do that, or no, or just no.
Or just no.
Simple. Yeah. I love it. So we want to ask you like a quick fire closing questions right now. So if you can just like keep these answers like as short as possible, a couple words, phrases.
Okay, let's do it.
Are you down to do that?
I'm super down.
Okay. First question, favorite product to pleasure yourself with?
Oh my gosh, the Lelo Lily 2, which is a tiny little bean-sized vibrator, has been my go-to forever and always. I also have it in a gold version, but the silicone one's better.
Okay. Favorite product to pleasure or to use with someone else?
The La Wand massager. It's a big wand massager.
Cool. Favorite book about sexual empowerment, normalizing sexuality?
Pussy by Regina Thomas.
Yeah. It's so good.
Like I said, I'm sorry. Females need more attention at this point.
I love it. I'm definitely putting together a grocery list right now. Favorite music to get down to?
Techno.
Yeah. It's always techno.
With your cats.
I'll give you a link. I made a Techno for sex playlist on SoundCloud. You think I'm kidding?
Oh yes, I want that
link. Question number 5. What are you most passionate about?
I think right now, definitely educating women on sexuality. Doing things like this is my passion. is what I'm most passionate about. It keeps me going.
Incredible. And it really does show. And I think that we need more people like you who are saying it's a fuck yes for me. And so I'm going to stand behind this 100%. On that note, do you have like a personal message or motto or mantra that you like say all the time? I know, like you said earlier, if it's not fuck yes, it's no. Anything else come to mind?
I've always, I think ever since I began my blog or began talking to people, and I use this on my website and I use it every single day, it's reclaim your power. Take your power back.
Yes.
It's been stripped from you. It doesn't have to be stripped from you sexually. It could be stripped from you in every single way. Take that shit back.
Amen.
I feel that.
Love it.
Thank you so much. Where can people find you? And we're going to have all this in the show notes too, but just so you can let us know.
Mm-hmm. So people can access loads of free information on my website, which is www.julietachiara.com. And through the same handle, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter as well. And from there, I'm always open to questions. I'm always open to one-on-one coaching and consulting and sharing the most information that I can to make it easy for you to explore your sexuality and in turn, take back your power in whatever way that may look like for you.
Thank you. I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jen and Leah.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of our listeners out there. Thanks for tuning in. This was an awesome show. And if you have any questions, feel free to message us or share this with people that you think would be interested in getting more information about sex and everything we talked about today. Until next time, bye, Deep Chatters.
To all you deep chatters out there, Leah and I want to thank you so much for listening. This is a podcast that's all about connection, so we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on Instagram at Deep Chats Podcast. And if you haven't already, please go to iTunes to rate and review us. Every review helps other deep chatters just like you be able to find this podcast.